I didn't wake up thinking anything unusual was going to happen today. It was just a regular Sunday morning like any other. The birds were chirping outside, the sun barely peeking through the kitchen window, and the smell of fresh coffee was drifting in the air. My bones ached, as they often did, but the quiet hum of the house made it easier to ignore. I had a list in my mind: take out a couple $100 for the week's groceries, a bit of cash for church, and of course, a refill on the ointment for my arthritis. It's a routine I'd been doing for years. The bank was just down the road, and I'd been a customer there for decades. Same place, same branch ever since they built it back in '95. Across the street from the old hardware store that used to smell like sawdust and varnish. I parked my old car, the one I'd had since 2001, and walked inside, the familiar bell above the door jingling as I entered. I'd known the tellers here for years, and there was something about this place that made me feel like I wasn't just another account number. I smiled at the young woman behind the counter, handed her my ID and my bank card, just like always. "Good morning, Miss Banks," I said, smiling as I always did when I walked in. She smiled back at me, but there was something in her eyes that I couldn't quite place, something that made me pause for a second. She quickly looked down at her screen, her fingers tapping the keys, but I could feel her hesitation in the air. For a split second, her face tightened, but she quickly tried to smooth it out with that professional customer service smile. "Just a moment, Miss Larkin, I'll be right back," she said, her voice tight but polite. She stepped away, walking toward the back office. I sat there, tapping my fingers on the counter, my eyes wandering around the bank. Nothing out of the ordinary. The old clock on the wall, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights, the usual dull thud of people talking on the phone or typing away on their computers. But for some reason, the quiet felt heavier today. A few minutes passed before the branch manager, Sarah, came out from the back. She always wore a press suit, had one of those voices that was polite but firm, like she could tell you bad news and make you think it was for your own good. "Miss Larkin, would you mind stepping into my office?" she asked, with that look on her face, the one you get when you know you're about to hear something you won't like. It wasn't even a question. She said it like it was a polite request, but we both knew it wasn't. I followed her into the small, glass-walled office at the back of the bank. It always smelled faintly of coffee in there, the kind of place where they talk about things you don't want to hear. She sat down and slid a statement across the desk toward me. I didn't need to look at it right away. I already knew something was off. I could feel it in my gut, that familiar twist of anxiety that comes when you're about to find out something you don't want to know. "Miss Larkin, your available balance is $4,200, she said, her voice soft but careful. I blinked, thinking I heard her wrong. That can't be right. My balance had never been anything close to that. Not in recent months, not ever. I'd lived frugally, worked hard all my life, and I was proud of the savings I had managed to build over the years. It wasn't much, but it was mine. She nodded gently, confirming the amount on the screen. "I double-checked," she said, a touch of sympathy in her voice. "But there have been several large transfers made in the last few months, all to the same account, Willow Investments, LLC. I stared at her, blinking like I'd been slapped. My mind raced, but nothing made sense. Willow Investments, what on earth was that? I hadn't heard of it before. I didn't have a business. I wasn't involved in anything like that. "Is this a mistake?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but it came out smaller than I intended. She gave me that polite smile again, the one that didn't reach her eyes. "I'd recommend speaking with a financial advisor," she said gently. "If you need to report fraud, we will cooperate fully, of course." I felt like I was in a daze as I thanked her and stood up to leave. My legs felt wobbly, like they were no longer attached to my body. My mind was racing, but it was hard to make sense of any of it. I walked out of the bank, my fingers gripping my purse a little too tightly. I wasn't sure where I was going, but my feet seemed to know the way. By the time I reached my car, I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on me, but I didn't know why. All I could think about was that balance, that strange company name. Something wasn't right, something had shifted, but I couldn't yet understand how or why. I had no idea then that the day was just beginning to unravel in ways I couldn't have possibly imagined. Before I continue, I want to ask all of you to please give a like to this video and subscribe to my channel, The Silent Stories, for more stories like mine. Your support means the world to me. Also, I'd love to know where you're watching from, so drop a comment telling me which country you're tuning in from. It's incredible to see how far this community of wonderful people has grown, and I'm so grateful to be able to share my story with you. The drive home felt longer than usual. The streets, usually so familiar and comforting, stretched out in front of me like they belonged to someone else. The soft hum of the engine was the only thing that kept me from sinking too deep into my thoughts. But no matter how hard I tried to push it out of my mind, the weight of the news I'd just received pressed against my chest. What was happening to my money? Where had it gone? And why didn't I know about any of this? When I got home, I didn't bother to take off my shoes. I didn't even close the door behind me. I just walked straight into the kitchen, my feet moving almost on their own. The house was too quiet. It was the kind of quiet that feels like it's about to swallow you whole. I spread the statement on the kitchen table, my hands trembling, and I sat down. My stomach churned, and my heart beat loud enough that it almost drowned out the sound of the clock ticking. I stared at the numbers, but they didn't make sense. My eyes kept going back to the column labeled transfers. There they were, the same transfers listed again and again, $7,000, $15,000, each one linked to that same strange account, Willow Investments LLC. I felt dizzy as I read the amounts, one after another. I knew I hadn't made those transfers, but the bank was saying I had. I hadn't been able to save much in my life, but I had worked hard to get what I had. 35 years of waking up early, working through lunch, scrubbing floors, cooking meals for kids who barely looked up when I served them. I'd sacrificed so much. I thought I'd done everything right, saved every penny, planned for the future, but now it felt like that future had been ripped out from under me without a word of warning. I thought about my son Marcus, my only child. He'd always been a sharp one, always knew how to talk his way out of anything. He'd always dressed nicely, had that swagger about him that made him seem like he had it all figured out. In the past few years, I'd noticed him talking more about investments, about business deals. He drove a shiny new car now, the kind I would never afford, and his wife Vanessa always wore clothes that looked like they belonged in magazines. At first, I thought maybe Marcus had finally hit it big, that all the years of hustling were paying off. He'd even started talking about opening his own company. Real estate, he said. I didn't know much about it, but I was proud of him. He always seemed so sure of himself, like nothing could go wrong. But now, sitting at the kitchen table, the reality of it all started to sink in. I picked up the phone and dialed his number, my hands still shaking. It rang twice before he picked up. His voice sounded casual, like we were about to chat about something simple, like the weather or a new recipe. "Hey mama, what's up?" he answered, his voice cheerful. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Marcus, I went to the bank today. They said someone moved over $50,000 out of my account." There was a long pause. Too long. Just enough time for the panic to crawl up my throat. Then he laughed, but it didn't sound like a laugh. It sounded like something else. "Oh yeah, that. Don't worry about it, mama. It's just some business stuff I've been taking care of. I moved some of your funds into a better account." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "What business stuff? You didn't tell me anything about that, Marcus." "We talked about this last month, mama. Remember, I set up a holding account for you," he said, his voice edging into that tone. I knew all too well the one that tried to make me feel like I was the one who had forgotten, like I was the one in the wrong. My heart thudded in my chest. "No, Marcus, I never agreed to that. I never signed anything." He sighed, like he was explaining something to a child. "It's fine, mama. I had you sign the papers. I'm handling it for you. You just forgot." My throat went dry. I didn't forget. I knew what I signed, and I definitely didn't sign any papers to give him control over my life savings. "I want to see those papers," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, the silence hanging heavy in the air. "I'll show you, mama. It's just working for you now," he said before hanging up without another word. I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, the hum of the fridge in the background. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was breathe. The house around me felt so much colder than it had before. My son, my own flesh and blood. How could he do this to me? To us? But it wasn't the time for tears. Not yet. I had to find out what was really going on, and I had to do it fast. I sat in the kitchen for a long while after that call, staring at the now empty phone screen. My hands were shaking so badly I had to set the phone down, afraid I might drop it. The silence in the room felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in on me. My mind raced, but it was all a blur. Marcus, the money, the account I didn't know about. Everything seemed to be spinning out of control, but there I was, sitting still in my chair, frozen in place by something I couldn't yet name. How could he do this? How could my own son, the boy I raised on my own after his father passed, the one I sacrificed everything for, betray me like this? I thought back to all the years I'd spent working so hard just to scrape by, just to give him a better life. I'd cleaned school floors for hours, made endless trays of food, and skipped meals just so he could have the things he needed. I never asked for much, just enough to get by. But all of that, all the years of work, the sacrifices, it was like it had never mattered to him. I thought about the years when he was growing up, the countless times I'd stayed up late, worrying over bills and wondering if I was doing enough for him. I gave him everything I had, my love, my time, my sweat and tears. But now it felt like none of it mattered. He had taken everything from me without even a second thought. The whole thing didn't sit right. Something was wrong, and deep down I knew Marcus was lying to me. I didn't know what kind of business he thought he was running, but I knew it wasn't right. No, I never signed anything, and I certainly didn't give him permission to handle my savings. He had to be lying. That was the only explanation that made sense. I needed answers, but I didn't know where to turn. I knew I couldn't go to Marcus. He'd just deny everything, tell me I was overreacting, that I had forgotten. So I decided to call someone else, someone I knew I could trust. My niece Ava was smart and quiet, but she had a way of cutting through the noise and getting to the heart of things. She had always been the type to speak only when it mattered, and when she did, people listened. I dialed her number, trying to steady my breath. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Aunt Joan, what's going on?" Her voice was warm, but I could hear the concern in it. I swallowed hard. "Ava, something's wrong with my money. I need your help. Marcus, he's moved my funds around. He says it's for some business investment, but I never agreed to anything like that. I didn't sign anything. He's lying." There was a pause on the other end. "Okay, calm down, Aunt Joan," she said gently. "Let me come over. We'll figure it out." When Ava arrived, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. She set her purse down, and we went straight to the kitchen table where I had the bank statement spread out. I watched as she scanned it quickly, her brow furrowed. Ava was good with numbers and even better at reading between the lines. "Okay," she said after a moment. "I'm going to need to look at your emails, your bank account, anything you have from Marcus. The sooner we figure this out, the better." Ava got to work typing away on her phone, looking through my bank records and the email correspondence I had with Marcus. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, feeling like I was about to fall apart. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about trust, about a lifetime of love and care that had been thrown aside like it was nothing. After what felt like hours, Ava finally looked up at me, her face serious. "Aunt Joan, I think I found something. There's a power of attorney form here, an email you supposedly sent Marcus, but this doesn't look right. The signature, it doesn't match yours." I felt my heart stop in my chest. I leaned over, looking at the email on her phone. Sure enough, there was a document attached, and my name was listed as the signer, but something was off. The shape of the J in my last name was wrong, the slant of the A didn't look right, and the curve of the O was all wrong. My signature had always been neat, always had that distinct slant, but this was a forgery. "Ava, this isn't mine. I didn't sign this." My voice cracked, but I couldn't help it. I felt the tears burning in my eyes, and for a moment I was back in the kitchen of the old house, holding my baby boy in my arms. I thought I had done right by him, that I had raised him to understand what love and family meant. Ava took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Aunt Joan, but this is bad. He's using this forged document to access your pension, your savings, and the bank. They don't even know this is happening." I felt the walls close in on me again. It was one thing to feel betrayed by someone I had trusted with my love and time, but this felt like a betrayal of everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed. "We need to do something," Ava said, her voice firm. "We can't let him get away with this." I nodded slowly, my mind finally starting to focus. It wasn't just about getting the money back. It was about holding him accountable. I had to stand up for myself, for everything I had given. I wasn't sure what that meant yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him destroy everything I had worked for without a fight. "Okay," I said, my voice steady now. "Let's do it." The next few days felt like an eternity. I kept replaying the conversation with Marcus in my mind over and over. Every word, every hesitation, every little detail. But the more I thought about it, the more it became clear something wasn't right. And I had to confront him. I couldn't keep living in a fog, wondering what he had done to me, to my life savings, to my future. I called him again, my heart heavy in my chest. This time I wasn't going to let him off easy. The last time we spoke, I'd let him slide by with vague reassurances and empty promises. But not anymore. I needed the truth. I needed answers. "Marcus," I said when he picked up the phone. My voice was steady, but I could feel the tension building behind my words. "I need to talk to you, now." He was quiet for a moment before responding. "What's going on, Mama? You sound upset." "I am upset," I said, my voice stronger now. "I went over the bank statement again, and I can't make sense of any of it. You're moving money from my account without my permission. You say it's for some business, but I never signed any papers for you to do that. I need to know what's going on, Marcus, and I need you to be honest with me." There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear the wheels turning in his head, trying to come up with some excuse, some lie, but I wasn't having it this time. I wasn't going to let him play me. Finally he spoke, but his voice was different now, strained, defensive. "Mama, I've already explained this to you. I moved your money to a safer account. It's all part of the plan I set up for you. I'm doing this for your own good. For my own good," I repeated, disbelief rising in my chest. Marcus, you didn't tell me about any of this. You didn't ask me for permission. You didn't even give me the chance to understand what you were doing. I want to see the papers. I want to see the proof that you had my consent." His voice grew sharper. "I told you, Mama. I already handled it. You just don't remember signing the papers. That's all. I'm doing this because I know what's best for you." I felt my frustration boiling over. "I know what's best for me," I said, my voice shaking now. "You're not the one who gets to decide that. I've spent my whole life working to build something that I can rely on in my old age. And you," I paused, the words catching in my throat. "You took it all without even asking." He sighed heavily. "Mama, you're overreacting. I'm just trying to help you." "Help me," I snapped, "by draining my account, by forging my signature. That's not help, Marcus. That's theft, and you know it." There was a brief silence on the other end, and then his voice, colder now, came through. "I didn't steal anything. I'm just making sure you don't have to worry about anything. You're getting older. You won't be able to handle things like you used to." I felt a chill run down my spine. "So what? Because I'm older, I don't deserve to have control over my own money anymore. Is that what you think?" My voice trembled with hurt now, but I didn't back down. "I gave you everything, Marcus. Everything. And this is how you repay me." "I'm not trying to hurt you, Mama," he said, his tone softer now, "but you're not getting any younger. You need to trust me. I'm doing this because I love you." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that my son wasn't the kind of person who would do something like this. But deep down, I knew better. The truth had been staring me in the face all along, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. "I don't want your help if it means losing everything I've worked for," I said, my voice firm. "I want my money back, Marcus. All of it. And I want to see those papers, the ones you say I signed. You can't keep hiding behind excuses. I'm your mother, and I deserve the truth." He was quiet for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice was laced with anger. "You'll never understand, Mama. You never did." I felt my heart sink, but I didn't let it show. "No, Marcus, it's you who doesn't understand. I raised you better than this. I trusted you, and now you've betrayed that trust." Before he could respond, I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking again, but this time, I wasn't afraid. I was angry. Angry at him for what he had done to me, and angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. But I wasn't going to sit here and let him get away with it. I was going to fight back. I had to. For me, for everything I had worked for. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally get the answers I deserved. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept spinning with the conversation I'd had with Marcus, the lies, the empty promises. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear his voice in my head telling me that I didn't understand, that I wasn't capable of managing things on my own anymore. It stung, it really did. I had spent my life proving to myself and the world that I could handle it, that I could handle everything life threw at me. That now all that felt like it was slipping away, like I was no longer in control of my own life. By morning, I was drained physically and emotionally, but I knew I couldn't sit on this. I had to do something. Marcus had taken my money, my future, and I had to get it back. But I couldn't do it alone. I needed someone who understood how to fight this kind of fight, someone who wasn't going to be swayed by Marcus's lies and charm. I thought about Ava. She had been my rock, my niece who always knew what to say, always had a cool head when I was losing mine. I didn't want to burden her, but this was beyond me now. I needed help. So I picked up the phone and called her again. Her number rang twice before she picked up. "Aunt Joan, what's going on?" Her voice was gentle but firm. She could tell something was wrong right away. "I need your help," I said, my voice steady but thick with emotion. "I need to figure out what's really going on. Marcus won't listen to me, and I know he's lying. I don't know what to do." There was a brief pause before she spoke. "Okay, Aunt Joan, I'll come over. We'll figure this out together." When she arrived, I felt a small sense of relief. Ava didn't waste any time with pleasantries. She was all business, all focus. She sat down at the kitchen table and looked through the bank statement again. I could see the gears turning in her head as she processed everything. Each transfer, each strange entry. She didn't say much, but I could see her mind working, and that gave me a little peace. She was taking it seriously. She wasn't going to let Marcus off the hook, no matter how convincing his story might sound. "I'm going to need to see your emails, Aunt Joan," Ava said. "Any communication you've had with Marcus about this, I need to know exactly what he's been telling you." I went to my email inbox and pulled up every message from Marcus I could find. There were a few emails, each one more vague than the last. None of them mentioned the transfer of money specifically, but there were plenty of hints, plenty of lines that seemed to reassure me that everything was fine. Everything was handled, but nothing concrete, nothing that explained what had really happened. Ava scanned through the emails, her eyes narrowing as she read each one. When she reached the last email, she stopped. Aunt Joan, I think I found something, she said, her voice tight with suspicion. She showed me the email from Marcus, the one that claimed to have set up a better account for me. The wording was vague, and the language sounded rehearsed, almost like he was trying too hard to make it sound legitimate. But there was nothing in there about a power of attorney, nothing that explained why he had access to my funds in the first place. It was a flimsy excuse, a half-baked story meant to cover up something much darker. Where's the paperwork, the forms, the signatures? Ava asked, looking at me. Marcus has to have something to back up his story. We need to see it. I felt a lump form in my throat. He says I signed the papers, but I didn't. I never gave him permission. I don't know what he's done, but this doesn't feel right. I don't know. Ava nodded, her expression serious. I know you didn't sign anything, and I'm going to help you prove it. We need to get in touch with a lawyer, someone who can help us figure this out. It felt like a weight was lifting off my shoulders, knowing I wasn't alone in this fight. Ava had always been there for me, and now more than ever, I needed her. But even with her help, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Marcus had already covered his tracks well, and I wasn't sure how deep this went. I'll help you find someone, Ava said, standing up and gathering her things. I'll make a few calls and set up a meeting with a lawyer who handles these kinds of cases. We're going to get to the bottom of this. I watched her leave, and for the first time in days, I felt a little bit of hope. But I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Marcus wasn't just going to hand over the truth. No, he was going to fight for whatever he thought he deserved, no matter the cost. But I wasn't going to back down. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let him take it all away. I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for my dignity, my peace, and my future. And I wasn't going to let him destroy it. I just had to figure out how to make him face the consequences of his actions. And with Ava by my side, I felt like I finally had a chance. A few days later, Ava came back to my house, and this time she wasn't alone. She had brought along a lawyer. His name was David, a tall, middle-aged man with a serious demeanor, wearing a dark suit that looked like it belonged in a courtroom. His eyes were sharp, and even though his voice was calm, there was something about him that told me he meant business. He sat down at the kitchen table right across from me and got straight to the point. Aunt Joan, he began, we've looked over everything Ava brought in, your bank statements, the emails from Marcus, everything you've given us, and I've got to tell you, this doesn't look good. In fact, it looks like your son has been using a forged power of attorney to access your funds. This is identity theft, it's financial abuse, and it's a crime. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My chest tightened, and for a moment I thought I might pass out. Financial abuse? Identity theft? The man I raised, the one I trusted, had done this to me? I felt my stomach turn. I had always known that Marcus had been getting a little too comfortable, but this was something I hadn't seen coming. David continued, his voice steady. The bank didn't catch it because on paper everything appeared legitimate. The forged power of attorney made it look like Marcus had the legal right to move your funds, but I've looked over the paperwork. The dates are off, the formatting's wrong, and most telling of all, your signature isn't yours. It's been copied. Ava was sitting beside me, her eyes focused on David, but I could feel her glancing at me every now and then, waiting for my reaction. I just stared at the lawyer, still trying to process what he was saying. My mind raced, jumping from one thought to the next. How could this happen? Why didn't I see it sooner? David handed me a stack of papers. These are copies of the documents we've found. Here's the forged power of attorney, and here's the original one you signed when Marcus was helping you manage your finances years ago. Look at the signatures, look at the dates, everything about this new one is fake. I held the papers in my trembling hands. I recognized my name, but the signature didn't look right. It wasn't how I wrote. The J in Joan was too sharp, and the way the A curved was all wrong. It was like someone had copied my handwriting and didn't even try to make it perfect. The more I looked, the more it felt like I was staring at a stranger's name. But the real shock came when David showed me something else, a series of bank transactions that had been made over the last few months. Large transfers, a few thousand here, 10,000 there, all to an account I didn't recognize, Willow Investments LLC. I had never heard of it before, and now I knew it was the place where my money had been going. Marcus created this company in your name, Aunt Joan, David explained. He listed you as a silent investor. That means he had full access to your funds, and from what we can see here, he's moved over $80,000 in the last few months alone. This is more than just a mistake. This is deliberate. I felt like the world was slipping out from under me. $80,000. Gone. I couldn't breathe. I'd worked my whole life, saved every penny I could. I'd never had much, but it was mine, and now Marcus had stolen it from me, without a second thought. David's voice pulled me back from the edge. Aunt Joan, this is criminal. Marcus used a forged document to get access to your account, and he's been transferring money out of it. We have enough evidence here to go to the police. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The reality of it all was sinking in. I had spent so many years taking care of Marcus, loving him, doing everything I could to make sure he had the things I never did, and now he had turned around and taken everything from me. I don't know what to do, I whispered. I never thought it would come to this. He's my son. How could he do this to me? David's voice softened. Aunt Joan, I understand. This is hard, but we can't let him get away with this. It's not just about the money, it's about holding him accountable for what he's done. If we don't act now, he'll just keep taking from you and others. You don't deserve this. Ava nodded, her hand gently resting on my arm. You've given him every chance, Aunt Joan, but this isn't about you anymore. It's about making sure he doesn't get away with it. It's about protecting yourself and your future. I looked at the papers in my hands, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I didn't want to take this to the police. I didn't want to do this to Marcus, but I knew I had no choice. What he had done was wrong, and I couldn't let it slide. I nodded slowly, feeling a strange sense of resolve starting to settle in my chest. Let's do it, I said, my voice steady now. We need to report this. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. David smiled, a small but reassuring smile. I'll handle everything. We'll file a police report, and we'll make sure the evidence is all in order. He won't get away with this. As they left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the papers in front of me. I was shaking, but it wasn't from fear, it was from the weight of what I had just decided. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. I knew that Marcus would fight back, that he would lie and deny everything. But for the first time in days, I felt like I was taking control again. I wasn't going to let him steal from me, from the life I had built. Not anymore. I had to stand up for myself. I had to take back what was mine. The days after I spoke with David and Ava felt like a blur. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel, relieved that I was finally doing something about it, or brokenhearted that it had come to this. The anger was still there, bubbling just beneath the surface, but there was also this heavy ache in my chest, one that I couldn't seem to shake. How had we gotten here? How had Marcus, my own son, turned on me like this? The thought of facing him in court terrified me. I had never imagined that it would come to this. The idea of sitting across from him, looking him in the eye, and telling the world what he had done, it made my stomach churn. I couldn't stop thinking about the last time I saw him, the way he shrugged off my pleas like they meant nothing. You're acting like I stole it, he had said, rolling his eyes. I'm investing it for you, Mama. It's safe. Safe. He had the audacity to say that after everything I had worked for, after every sacrifice I had made, it was clear now that he wasn't trying to help me. He wasn't trying to protect me. He was using me, using my trust, my money, my love, all to feed his own greed. And when I found out, when I confronted him, he didn't care. He didn't apologize. He didn't even seem to feel guilty. It was as if I was just a means to an end for him. But the worst part wasn't the money. The worst part was the betrayal. The fact that he had lied to me, manipulated me, and used me like I was nothing. I had spent his whole life believing in him, believing that he would turn out to be someone I could be proud of. And now I was faced with the reality that the person I had raised, the boy I had loved, was capable of doing something like this. I spent the next few days in a haze, replaying everything in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. The memories of when he was younger kept coming back to me. His first steps, his first words, the way he used to look at me with those big eyes full of trust. I remembered holding him when he was a baby, the late nights I spent rocking him to sleep, telling him how much I loved him. I remember all the times I had stayed up late worrying about his future, about making sure he had everything he needed. But now all of that felt like it had been for nothing. Every little thing I had done for him, every time I went without so he could have more, seemed like it had been erased with one phone call. I had loved him so much, and all I had gotten in return was betrayal. But there was no turning back now. Ava and David had helped me gather the evidence I needed, and there was no denying what Marcus had done. He had forged documents, he had stolen from me, he had broken the law, and no matter how much it hurt, I couldn't let him get away with it. I knew that filing the police report and pressing charges was the right thing to do. I couldn't let him continue to take advantage of me, to manipulate me with his lies. But every step of this process felt like it was tearing me apart. I wasn't just fighting for the money anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my sense of self, and my future. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let him destroy it all. And yet every time I thought about him, about facing him in court, I felt a new wave of sorrow. What had happened to the boy I had raised, the boy I had loved unconditionally? It was hard to reconcile that boy with the man who had betrayed me so completely. I kept thinking, where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? But the truth was, I had done everything I could. I had given him the best of me, and he had chosen to betray that trust. In the quiet moments when I was alone, I found myself crying, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stop it. The tears came not just for the money I had lost, but for the relationship I had lost too. I had given him everything, and now I was left with nothing but memories of a son who no longer seemed to care. But I couldn't stay in that place forever. I couldn't let this break me. I had worked too hard, fought too long to let one person destroy everything I had built. And if Marcus thought I was going to back down, if he thought I was going to let him get away with it, he was wrong. This was my fight now, and I wasn't going to lose, not when there was so much at stake. In the end, I knew that I would have to let go of the hope that he would ever truly understand what he had done. But I also knew that I couldn't let him walk away unpunished. He had stolen from me, not just my money, but my trust, and it was time for him to face the consequences. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about the money anymore. It was about making sure he knew that actions have consequences. And for me, it was about taking back control of my life, of my future. When the day came, when I stood in front of a judge and told my story, I knew it wasn't just for me. It was for all the years I had spent raising him, all the sacrifices I had made, and all the love I had given. It was for the mother I had been, and the one I was still trying to be. And no matter how hard it was, I knew I had to do this, because the truth mattered, and I would not let him take that from me too. The courtroom smelled like dust and old paper. It wasn't a place where anyone wanted to be, but there I was. I sat in the front row, my back straight, my palms resting on my lap. My fingers trembled, but I wasn't going to let anyone see that. I had come this far, and I wasn't about to let fear take over now. Tar, my nephew, sat next to me. His presence was steady, like a silent anchor that kept me grounded. He didn't say much, but I could feel him there, just a few inches away, offering me the comfort I hadn't realized I needed. He had been with me every step of the way, helping me when the world seemed too overwhelming to handle on my own. I was grateful for him, for his quiet strength. David, my lawyer, was on my other side, flipping through his files with the focus of someone who had done this 100 times before. I didn't know much about the law, but I trusted him. He had seen this through, and he believed in my case. That belief meant the world to me right now. And then there he was, Marcus, my son. He walked into the courtroom like he owned the place, his sharp suit hugging his body like it was tailor-made for him. His hair was combed back in that way he liked, like he thought he could hide behind the image of a successful businessman. But I knew him better than that. I knew the real Marcus, the one who had stolen from me without a second thought, the one who had lied to my face and never once showed any remorse. I wanted to look away, to pretend I didn't see him, but I couldn't. I couldn't hide from the truth anymore. There he was, standing across the room, with no shame, no apology, just the cold arrogance of a man who thought he was untouchable. The judge walked in, his presence commanding immediate silence. He was an older man, kind but firm. His eyes swept across the room, taking in the scene, and then he sat behind the bench, his gavel in hand. The proceedings began, and I felt my heart race as the judge called the case. David stood up, his voice calm but powerful. Your Honor, we're here today because of a serious breach of trust, one that has resulted in financial harm to my client, Mrs. Joan Larkin. The defendant, Mr. Marcus Larkin, used a forged power of attorney to access his mother's pension account, and he transferred substantial sums of money without her knowledge or consent. I felt the weight of those words settle on me. It wasn't just the money, it was everything. My trust, my love, my years of sacrifice, all taken from me by the one person I had thought I could always count on. David continued, walking the judge through the evidence, showing the forged documents, the emails, the bank statements. Everything was laid out in front of me, the truth undeniable. I couldn't look at Marcus. I couldn't bear to see his face as David exposed his lies. Then it was Marcus's turn to speak. His lawyer stood up, trying to paint a picture of him as a son who was only trying to help, someone who had meant no harm. I could hear the lawyer's voice, smooth and convincing, but I wasn't fooled. Marcus hadn't meant to help me. He had meant to help himself. He had meant to steal from me. When it was finally time for me to take the stand, I stood slowly, my legs shaking, but my resolve as firm as it had ever been. I felt the eyes of everyone in the room on me as I walked to the witness box. I took a deep breath and looked at the judge. Your Honor, I worked for 35 years in a school cafeteria. I cleaned, I cooked, I saved every penny I could. I worked hard so that I could retire without needing anyone's help. I never had much, but I had enough. I had peace of mind. And then I learned that my own son had stolen everything from me. The words came slowly, but they were strong. I raised him with love. I gave him everything I had, even when it meant going without. And when I confronted him, when I asked him why he did it, he didn't even apologize. He didn't even care. He told me I didn't need the money anymore, that I was too old to handle it. That's the kind of person he's become. I paused, trying to steady my breath. I didn't come here to ruin my son's life. I came here because I don't know who he is anymore. I came here because I need my life back. I worked too hard. I sacrificed too much to let him take everything from me and walk away without facing the consequences. The room was silent, and I felt the weight of my words hang in the air. I didn't look at Marcus as I spoke. I couldn't, but I knew he was listening. For the first time, I felt like I was speaking my truth, my real truth, not just the one I had been living under all these years. When I finished, I walked back to my seat, my legs still shaky but my heart lighter. I had said what I needed to say. I had told the truth, and I had done what I came here to do. No matter what happened next, I knew I wouldn't carry the shame anymore. The judge deliberated for what felt like forever, and when he finally spoke, his voice was steady and resolute. "Mr. Larkin," he began, his eyes focused on Marcus, "what we have here is not just a violation of trust. It is a deliberate and calculated act of theft. You have taken advantage of your mother's trust, and you have caused her significant financial harm. For this you will be held accountable." I held my breath, waiting for the verdict, and then the judge's words came down, as heavy as a hammer. "I sentence you to 5 years in state prison, Mr. Larkin, and you will be required to pay full restitution to your mother with interest. You will also have your business license permanently revoked, and you will not be allowed to operate under any financial or fiduciary authority for the remainder of your sentence and beyond." I sat there stunned, as the bailiff called for Marcus to stand. He was handcuffed, his shoulders slumped, and I could see the anger in his eyes, but there was no remorse, no apology. As they led him out of the courtroom, I felt nothing but emptiness. This wasn't a victory, this wasn't something I could feel good about. It was just the reality of what had happened, and the consequences he had to face. When the doors closed behind him, I finally exhaled, the weight of everything I had carried over the past few months slowly lifting. I didn't feel relief, I didn't feel joy, I just felt free. Outside the courthouse, I didn't look for Marcus. I didn't search for his gaze or his excuses. I just walked. I walked toward the future that was still mine, even though he had tried to take it from me. And when I reached the street corner, I turned to face the setting sun. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I was free, and no one could take that from me.